Hi, Vincent. And Bill.
Evening.
Hi.
Hello, Tom.
How are you?
Well, thanks. You?
Good. Good. Yeah.
Good evening, folks.
Hey, Leo.
Hi, Leo.
We'll just give it a couple more minutes. We've got a quorum now. And we're still waiting on Dennis, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Craig McCormick's on.
Oh, is she? Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to change it there.
Jackie, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, no.
Hi, we can. How are you? And I think Janet, I just let her in from the waiting room. I know she was on the Human Rights Commission meeting, so she should be hopping on.
Mhm.
Oh, yep, there she is.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so I think all we're missing is Dennis. Okay, and I haven't heard from Dennis, but I know sometimes. Let's get started. Let's call the meeting to order. CPC, Wenham CPC, January 21st, 2021. It is now 7:01. We have in attendance Tom Starr, Barbara Locke, Peter Clay, Bill Weiss, Leo Mastronzi, Elizabeth Craig
McCormick.
McCormick, I got it. And Patrick Waddell, chair, and we're missing Dennis Curran.
Can you guys hear me, by the way? Peter
Yes.
Clay?
Mhm.
Yes,
All right.
Peter. Yes, we
Didn't
can.
work the first time, sorry.
Good.
And I'm eating dinner, so I'm gonna shut down my video.
Okay. Welcome to the CPC. I just want to go through a couple housekeeping items. First, I want to give special thanks to our town hall employees. Jackie Bresnahan, Catherine Tinsley, and Margaret Hoffman is here as well as a special guest. Thank you very much. Without you guys, we don't run.
Yeah,
You know, all
sure.
the issues we have today, you're our glue. So don't go away, please.
Mhm.
We need you. We need you, and we truly appreciate you. I just want to make a special note, besides that one, that this year's match, and we'll get into this later, but I just want to highlight this year's match is 59.2%. And it may be changed because Jackie's got updated numbers, but as of last count, it was $125,854 that we wouldn't have gotten if we weren't a 3% community. The total match was 243 plus, but of that, the 125, almost 126,000 was because we're a 3% community. It's real money. I just want to let you know, I also spoke with Sean Timmons of the rec department, and I said that we would like to meet with him as a group, potentially as the rec committee or rec department. I left that up to him. So just something to think about in the future. And I also like to extend that same invitation to the Affordable Housing Trust. You guys are what we're supposed to be doing. So we want to meet with you like we did with Greenbelt and know what's on your mind. And then just something to think about. No action to be taken now, but think about whether or not you would support the town coming up with a master plan. There's been a lot of talk of it. In order to get grant money, you have to have a lot of grant money. You need to have a master plan. Last time it was talked about, it was about going to be about $100,000. So it's not cheap, but it is something that we as a group may want to support, and we may want to send a letter to either the Board of Selectmen or town meeting. Just something to think about, nothing to do here. And with that, let's go to public comment. Is there anyone out there from the public that would like to make a comment?
There's no one in the chat at this time. And I don't see anyone other than committee members who are unmuted.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is it right for the committee members to comment now?
Public comment? Yes, yes.
All right. You mentioned the plan, because the plan helps us, enables us to, facilitates grants, okay? We did an open space plan almost 3 years ago. And in fact, that's about all the money we spent on open space, except for the trail map and a bench, which nobody uses, but
The bench was never built.
that plan was supposed to facilitate grants. So I think we ought to re-examine that plan.
Okay. So the open space plan is a good document. Let's shelve this for now, just so we can get into the presentations. But yes, the master plan would be different and it could not come out of CPA funds. But so with that said, let's move on to the minutes. Did everyone get a chance? Did everyone receive the minutes and get a chance to review them?
Yes.
I did.
Will someone make a motion to accept the minutes, or is there any discussion? Is there any edits that need to be made?
I'd like to move we approve them as written.
I'll second.
Are we ready for a roll call vote? Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Barbara? Oh, you're muted. Oh. A thumbs up may suffice, or a thumbs down.
There you go.
That's a thumbs up. You hit that, Jackie? Peter?
Yes.
Yes. Bill?
I approve.
Leo?
Yes,
Elizabeth?
Yes.
And Patrick Waddell is a yes as well.
How about Janet Burt?
Oh, I'm sorry. You came in late. I have you written above my my list of people. Yes, Janet. What do you say?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Now into the presentations. So we have 4 applications in front of us. I hope you all have had a chance to read them. I'm going to take them out of order that's on our agenda. And I'm going to ask that we go with probably the simplest first, which is the town hall debt. So the town hall debt this year, the request is for $121,900. I don't know if we need a presentation on town hall debt. We should be pretty familiar with it. Would anyone like to discuss town hall debt? Everyone's okay with it. So we're not going to take any votes tonight. It's not on our agenda to take votes. This is presentations and discussions, not a vote. So I hear no discussion on town hall debt. So I think we can move that to our next meeting to the vote. Next, I would ask the Open Space and Rec Committee for their presentation, and we've got their packet. Is Ernest here, or will Vincent be?
Vincent. Yeah.
Vincent.
I'll be presenting on behalf of the committee.
Excellent. It's good to see you again, Vincent.
It's always a pleasure, Patrick. Hope you're well.
You too.
We can start if that works. So my name is Vincent Fennell. I'm the Vice Chair of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. And we're coming before you today for an application for funding in relation to what we believe to be an underutilized asset, West Wenham Higginson Park. So I can jump into the presentation. Maybe Jackie, just the next page would be great. Our proposal to receive an application to CPC is really revolving around 4 areas: to secure funding for a feasibility study, which we would hope the output will be in 4 parts: obtaining a site analysis, identifying the required improvements, feasibility, uses, and potential funding sources for additional efforts or work or improvements that need to be done. As part of that feasibility study, we'd look for design sketches and cost estimates around the possible uses of the park as a foundation of the park, and also to enable future planning and discussion as we look at it. Also looking at obtaining public feedback and input as to the use of the park. Really, our perspective and our position as a committee is that this is an underutilized town asset, existingly owned town parcel. And I think actually there's a picture and a map on the next page. So maybe Jack can go to the next page. So this is the actual park that or location and the lot that we're talking about, which is, just a little over 3 acres over on Topsfield Road to the west of the town, to the town hall, really. And this is a pre-existing park. I think we can jump into the next part, and I'll go into some of the aspects of why we believe this is, underutilized. The park in its current state is maintained by the Wenham DPW. Grass is cut. There's a grass field. It is maintained, but it's really, that's it. There's not much else happening there. There is no programming or park or youth sports that happen on that field. I think that has happened in the past, but not in recent history. The access and the car parking is quite basic at best. There's some photographs that I'll show you in a sec, actually, and that brings us into the condition of the existing facilities. The basketball court and the tennis court that are there are not, they're in disrepair is probably the best way to put it. So I'll jump into the next part, which is going to show you some pictures of just kind of where the goals of the Open Space and Recreation Committee, right? As part of our charter and our plan, right, provide and maintain facilities for active recreation for all residents of the town of Wenham. In doing so, we are trying to make sure that we improve and maintain existing parks, the playgrounds that exist, to provide a mixed use for all of the community, for all needs and interests. And that's really kind of the driver behind the feasibility study of how we could really meet that need. What are the options available to us as a committee and as an organization, as a town? So that is really kind of how we also found this as a key driver behind our application tonight. I think maybe go to the next page, please. These are the pictures that I was going to discuss, right? In this case, this is a picture of the parking area. As you can see, it's almost a dirt road is the parking. And again, it's poorly designed, and it's just kind of not really a parking as we would think about in the accessibility that we would need to go with that. We'll go to the next page, please. This is a picture of the basketball court. As part of our actual kind of research and work that we had done before this, we spoke with Sean Timmons, right? This has always been an area that they've looked at an improvement, but it kind of felt like, well, there's other areas that we could look at, and it's just not really been a priority. So that's one of the other reasons for driving this application tonight. Again, you see that there's, the basketball netting and everything is just, it's a very old and not really where we would like it to be to kind of encourage usage and be functional for, the standard that we'd expect. The next level, I think, is going to be the tennis court. Some examples there. Again, showing you just a very quick example of, you're also seeing the facility, right? That the space, for those of you who may not have been there recently, it's a wide open space, et cetera. But also this is the state of the current equipment. We'll go into the next one, please, Jack. And this is it's an interesting property for those, again, I'm assuming everyone knows it. It does have quite a steep rise, and this is a much higher plateau that exists above the tennis court and the basketball court that's there, and again, above the parking again, right? So there is kind of almost that 3-tier nature to it. And this is actually, I think this is almost north facing when you're looking at this aspect, right? So Topsfield Road is on your back. And this is, again, showing you just the kind of the topography of the town, of the field and the space again. So now I think we're going to go into one of the aspects that we also have considered and kind of view as a potential, certainly it's an output of the application. We've identified that there is a significant grant opportunity from the Stanton Foundation, which is in particular, in this case, it's focused on dog parks. And the way that opportunity works is that you obtain the initial plan and design material, but then you can apply for the design grant and for a construction grant, which would in both cases cover 100% of the design grant, and then 90%, up to 90% of the construction grant. So that is a huge opportunity, we think, for a significant capital injection, again, as one opportunity. And really, we've, as a committee, tried to ensure that we're always considering alternate optional funding sources. So this was an example of one that we would like to tie in as part of our feasibility study. Are there other grants examples like this that we can use and we could leverage this our output? I think the dogs for the dog park by the sound of things. You can go to the next page, please. So this is a little bit more detail just around the application that we've put in. We've requested a total budget of $15,000. We expect that the feasibility study and the application is for a $15,000 budget. We obtained 3 initial estimates or kind of statements of work that we've worked with to understand what would be the price that we would look at. And that's where we got to this budget figure. We are not seeking any other funding for this study. As I just mentioned earlier, we're looking at, as part of this study, an output would be potential funding sources for any of the outputs that would be seen in the feasibility study. We look at that as our first phase evaluation of possible renovation, so what we would do, and also as an output, provide that preliminary design and cost estimate that would hopefully allow us to apply for grants. In the case of the Stanton Foundation, right, you need to get to a certain level before you can apply for the grant, and that's exactly the kind of level we're trying to get to for whatever the feasibility study finds. That we are already at a grant application ready level is where we'd hope to be. I'll go to the next slide. That's all right. This is just the timeline that we expect, or we expect the project to be. Really starting post, pre-July 2021, doing prep work as well if we receive funding, and then to get that through to the stage where we could really have the planning of the posting of the RFP, the kickoff information, working on the material that we'd expect, developing the plan and the design material, and then a final deliverable within the 6 months timeframe. Here we've kind of said, and then can we dovetail that into application grant as a kind of a 2022 deliverable? We'd start to say, we really timed it that way to sequence things in such a way that once we have an output and we've gotten public feedback, we are now in a position to start to look to apply. So really kind of looking at as a longer initiative, of which this would be the first piece. I think we've looked at this in terms of implementation and the effort involved. The grant would be managed by the Open Space Committee and the Conservation and Open Space Committee together. The feasibility would be executed by the chosen consultant post the posting, after the analysis of the RFP and decision that had been made there. There would be no maintenance required. This is again a paper study, so nothing required there. I think that's, in terms of community support for this, we have kind of really looked at 2 aspects as well. One is, I'll start with the latter first, right? The respondents, when there was a public forum and survey done, 27% identified this as a priority for redevelopment, as an area that was underutilized and an asset that really had not seen much attention in quite a while. And we have also received, and they've been attached in the original application, the letters of support that we've received for this initiative. And again, part of the activity would be to, I'll jump into that. There we go. That's, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. So I'm happy to answer any questions, Patrick, if that's the best way to go.
Yeah. So we'll go around. Jackie, if you could coordinate which members have questions. If you could just raise your hand if you have a question, committee members. Barbara?
Yes, I really believe that this is a very underutilized resource in the town. Just a little full disclosure, my passed away father-in-law was on the committee back in 1976 in the Bicentennial Committee. That's what this park was originally called. After years of West Wenham residents really coming face to face with the Board of Selectmen saying, we need more resources in our part of town. And it was actually at the time a place where there was a tennis court, there was a baseball field on that upper field, which I know that in the town of Wenham playing fields is a big priority. We're very scant on those and always looking for them. So I don't know if that is something that this study would look into. I understand there was a butter objection to baseballs flying through the air, but I think that that's something that maybe we could mitigate in some way. But I really think that we really should look into a study like this. My one concern is, is this study going to include, and I think I read this in the application, community output, especially people in West Wenham, especially in regards to a dog park, which I know is a big thing these days, but a dog park in West Wenham is not going to be the West Wenham Dog Park. It's going to be the North Shore Dog Park in my mind. So I just want to know if that is what this study will include, community input, especially West Wenham residents who, over the years have felt slighted in many ways by the town of Wenham. As speaking former West Wenham resident, I have to say.
So first of all, thank you for the kind of the little bit of history as we were talking about, as we were considering this, those are the things that we were looking at. And it's funny you mentioned the baseball, because so this does look like it's got that ample space and size, and really that's an opportunity, and playing fields as a key area for us as a town. To directly answer your question, getting and obtaining public feedback is absolutely an aspect of this feasibility study. And, those two are going hand in hand. It's not, of these possible uses, what would be the attraction and the detraction on those cases as well. So that's certainly something that we envisage as an output of this activity.
Any other members? Leo?
How much is the request in the application?
$16,000 is the
15,000.
application.
15,000.
Now, based off of 3 estimates that we worked with, with Ernest as vice chairman had asked, as chairman, and we'd, engaged some
over the
professionals in the area to understand what that would be.
This is the 15th. This is the 15th application from the Recreation Committee.
They're not rec.
We've approved 14 of them to the tune of just under $1 million, little over 900,000.
Leo, this isn't rec. This is open space and rec. It's a different committee.
Yeah. I think that 15,000, especially where you show that 20%, 27% of the people in town have an interest in this. I think that 15,000 is a good investment, especially because it sounds to me like it's gonna make a grant for quite a sum of money potential. So I think it's a good investment. How much of the grant do you think that's possible? 150 to 200?
Well, to be clear, this is not to apply for one specific grant. This is to see what grants are out there, what use is optimal. Again, having that discussion with the community to say what would be the optimal use of an underutilized asset, what would be the best for the town. In doing so, understanding what grants are available that might, again, support that use that we find or those uses that we uncover. And then in the example that you're asking about, that is a specific grant that we were aware of, which is an illustration of how we could kind of sequence these activities to get to, I think it was up to $225,000 was that grant in that particular case. And again, this is
so in other words, there's several grants that we could apply for, and there's a good chance that we could realize quite a bit of money towards what we want to do.
The hope is that there are other grants similar to that would allow us, and this would enable us to be in a position to apply for those in a prepared demonstration activity.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Vinny, Peter Clay.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
I'm waving at you. Can you see me? So I coach my daughter's youth soccer.
Yeah.
And, fields were always tight. And whenever we couldn't find one, we'd go over to that place and practice.
Yeah.
You're right about the parking. It's it's haphazardous and it's actually kind of dangerous. We almost had a couple girls run over by just moms not really knowing which way to go. So I totally support the 15 grand to look at ways to better utilize that spot.
Great. I think that's great to hear. And I think I'm in agreement, not insofar as how can we start to improve that aspect, which enables the usage of the field in a better, a more optimal way for the town.
Well, and you know, just driving through Hamilton, you know, you go past Patton Park and you see kids playing basketball and people playing tennis.
Yeah.
And, you know, why wouldn't West Wenham want to do the same thing?
But I think, and to the point that was made earlier a little bit, I do believe there's actually some pre-existing facilities there already in the water mains, et cetera. So already it's kind of, how do we just start to revitalize that to get it used in the kind of way that you've talked about for the community on the eastern side of it?
Vincent, this is Bill Wise. I'm actually a member of, resident of West Wenham, and I wholly support this undertaking. I think it's a wonderful objective to solicit, you know, input from the town, particularly residents of West Wenham. I agree with you. It's wholly underutilized. I do see young high school kids up there playing basketball, shooting the hoop. Just, you know, they do use it once in a while. I've on occasion seen someone use the tennis court, but the conditions of both are deplorable. So it's really, you know, frankly, we can put the whole property to a better use than it currently is serving. And it's in the condition that it's in presently is really, it's just almost embarrassing. It's deplorable. So I'm wholly supportive of your request for the funding for the feasibility study. I think it's just a great first step. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll relay that to the committee as well, please. It's not just my application, right? So thank you.
All right.
Anna, are you trying to unmute? Saw you.
No,
Okay, sorry, just checking. Apologies.
no, no. I just wanted to say that when I found out about the potential application, I went up there just to take a walk around. And as I reached, the parking's a mess. I think it can be easily fixed, but besides that, the tennis court's a mess, huge crack. The basketball court isn't really a court. It's small, but it is a second level and it's a very distinct level. When I got to the third level, a huge bird was in the middle of the field and took off in front of me. And I looked at it, I'm like, it's not a hawk, it's too big. And it wasn't a bald eagle, I didn't think, until I went home. And it was a juvenile bald eagle, 4 to 6 years old, modeled underneath, unbelievable. So I walked the field, and then I also discovered there's a trail system right off the top that also ties into the gas pipeline. A number of stone walls, colonial era stone walls up there. It's a completely underutilized site. I agree. One question. I talked to Sean Timmons and I talked to him about this park, and we talked about the Stanton Foundation. And I attended your meeting previously when you talked about the Stanton Foundation, and he agreed that their rate of funding is crazy. That you're talking about, they have been known to fund 100% of dog parks, which is, you know, a great number for us. And I would ask, would you look to someone like an Essex Tech or a UMass Stockbridge School as a potential construction partner? You know, local, well, Stockbridge isn't that close, but I know this would be something that I have to think they'd be interested in.
So that's a great question. It's not something that we've considered in the construction aspect, given we've tried not to kind of lead the witnesses as to what the end output would be in our discussions in the community, as the committee. We really said, right, and how do we start to get to a point we get a viable output? I think that's absolutely something we would consider. I do not believe anyone on the committee would have any issues with that, or even, you know, would actually be supportive of it. We also, to kind of echo the example that to echo the opinion, I'm going to give you the example that we even, as we were going through the the initial statement of work evaluation of the cost for this grant, I know that Ernest, and the name unfortunately escapes me, had engaged an educational aspect of the landscape architecture. So I've forgotten the name, but again, just to show you that that mindset was absolutely where we kind of had considered. I think in that case, it was not fit for purpose, and also the timing was quite different insofar as they would take it on, evaluate it, wouldn't give us a decision as to whether they would actually do the project until, 6 to 12 months from now anyway. So that was the reason that we kind of, the experience in that case. But I think it does echo your question as very much being central to kind of how the committee thinks and operates.
And I just wanted to thank the Open Space Committee for meeting jointly with us. I truly appreciate you guys coming and meeting with Greenbelt as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great partnership.
I unfortunately wasn't able to attend that one, but I know that that's been something that we've looked at as a committee to try and engage more and more of the committees around and more of the population here as part of our activities. I think that's certainly something we put front row center. So
We're trying to do the same thing. Excellent. Anyone else? Any public comment? Anyone else have any comment on this one?
So, as a member of the Open Space Committee, I just thought I'd say that, I agree with Vincent that the members would be definitely amenable to what you suggest, Patrick. The dog park grant is very attractive. We hope that if, feasibility study goes in another direction, that there'll be other, really attractive grants as well. But that's the one, we were aware of, and we were aware of interest in a dog park that came, from our initial, questionnaire sessions that we did to get feedback when we were, forming the Open Space Committee. It wasn't necessarily connected to that site, but we know some people are interested in dog parks. So.
Yes, this is Elizabeth. I think the dog park idea is fabulous. Having driven around pre-COVID trying to find a park for my pup. And Beverly restricts theirs to only Beverly residents. So, that's a possibility too. It's all in the honor system, but
right.
That's a possibility to restrict it.
Well, Jackie and I had a conversation earlier this week about the potential of it being a revenue producer. That if you want to come from out of town, maybe we charge. It's possible. I cite the trustees at Appleton and how no one ever pays there, but it's a potential.
But I think that's certainly a part of how we consider this feasibility study. And certainly I think if I think of, because, Pat, to go back to what you talked about, the property itself, when you think about an open space, and it has clearly had work done to it. It is, development ready in many ways. I'm not exactly, but it's very close to being in a position. The 3-tier component, the parking is, regardless of what is put there, it's very easily solved, I would say. Yeah. And I think that's, there's a lot that it would tick a lot of boxes. And certainly a revenue producing aspect in any shape or form would be a great idea as well, or an opportunity for it as well. Or even the multiple uses across the levels. There's certainly things that we can consider here.
Hey, Vinny, Peter Clay. If the study says that putting like a little league field in there is not a bad idea, then all we have to do is go over and talk to Hamilton Wenham Little League, the richest organization in the 2 towns, and get them to pay for it. If you ever looked at the difference between Cheeseman and where the high school baseball team plays, it's ridiculous.
Yep.
So, and they literally have more money than God. They don't know what to do with all their money.
I'll put the call into.
Yeah, I think the only objection I've ever heard to that aspect really is the parking, right? That's why it's not used in an organized way.
As a baseball coach, it's too small for a little league field. It would work for a t-ball field. It doesn't.
Okay.
You need 200 feet from home plate to the outfield fence, and then you need backstops. It's too small for a baseball field. but for a T-ball field, it would be fine. But I think the study would come up with a plan for that space. So,
So would an additional T-ball field relieve pressure on the other fields?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Right. Margaret, did you have your hand up? Nope, you're muted.
You're muted.
There we go. Sometimes it takes me a minute to find my cursor on the. No, I did want to let the committee know that the property next to this is Audubon property. Patrick, you said you were out there and you saw that trail system. It's the Cedar Pond Sanctuary, I think it's called. And Audubon reached out to us last week and said that they're interested in doing some work on those trails. They want to improve the parking off of Cherry Street, where you enter on that side, and then they'd like to create a trail that's all an all-person trail. So it would have handicapped accessible trails, be accessible for wheelchairs, all through that area. So it's, certainly going to start to be used more. And if, parking was available on this side, I think it would be certainly helpful to their cause also.
Excellent. And I did see their letter in the past.
Yeah. I mean, their only issue is that if it becomes a dog park, that the dogs don't cross over.
Yeah. Audubon doesn't allow dogs on their properties really, but I talked to her about that and said anything that was.
It'd be a fence or
signs. Yeah, fencing and signs and stuff. Sure.
All right. We all set with open space and rec?
Mm-hmm.
Next application.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you.
We'll have our deliberations and votes at our next meeting, and you are welcome to attend that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to the Wenham Museum. The Wenham Museum has requested $47,400 for 2 HVAC units. And we have Kristen Noon here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for considering our application this year for CPA funding. I've put together a short PowerPoint, about 14 slides, just to sort of provide a bit of an update on the grants that we have received from CPA funds at town meeting, and also then just to review this year's application. So Jackie, do you mind just going forward? Thank you. So as you may recall, we've received some grants over the last several years, and in FY15 and FY18, firstly to digitize our Benjamin H. Conant collection of historic archival photographs. We had about 4,000 glass plate negatives in our collection that we were able to digitize and put on the website with CPA grant funding rather. And we also have undertaken a preservation project related to our historic house to improve the drainage surrounding that structure in order to move water away from it. So Jackie, if you don't mind going to the next slide. The Conant collection contains, as I mentioned, nearly 4,000 images taken in Wenham from about 1890 to about 1910. And with CPA funds, we were able to have all of these glass plate negatives scanned by a professional archivist, put into our collections database. All the photographers' notes and notebooks were transcribed. To the extent possible, she was able to locate current day addresses for some of the houses and properties in this collection. At the time these photographs were taken, the folks in town did not really use the street addresses that we know today, like, 97 Main Street or what have you. They referred to houses by names like, the Kimball Dodge House or things like that. So she was able to do some cross-referencing there. We've put them into appropriate storage, and we've also largely got them on our website. We were, planning to wrap this up last year and to make a bigger splash and do, public programming and invite the public and everything to see these on our website. COVID-19 has delayed those plans slightly, but the website is nearly finished. It's located at wenhammuseum.org/Conant. The highlight gallery from this collection is live, and imminently we'll be linking over from our collection database all 4,000 images. You'll be able to browse from your phone, your tablet, computer, and also there'll be the ability for the public to buy images. We get that request quite frequently from residents in town, for people who maybe live in a historic property or like historic photos of the downtown, or in some instances have ancestors who have photographs in this collection. So we'll be able to facilitate that via web as well. I don't believe we're going to spend all of the funds that were awarded to the museum through this grant. We were able to economize both with archivist time and also on some supplies, particularly on the website end of things. We ended up needing to switch web designers midstream here, but that was, I think, ultimately beneficial in that the firm that we switched to was able to make some recommendations and do some things here at a lower cost. So I think that's all positive. I don't have the exact figure that will be returning to the fund, but it will be, into the low thousands of dollars that we will not be using. So hopefully, that helps your committee in its work to complete other initiatives. So we're looking forward to, finally wrapping this up within the next month or so. And then the question will be the kind of publicity and launch that we do to not only inform the community that this is available, but also that it was done with CPA funds. The museum does turn 100 in 2022, and hopefully at that time we'll be able to gather in person, and we'd love to do some kind of larger lecture and presentation, either in the museum or maybe at the First Church or something like that, where we could really, put some of these things up on a large screen and have, our staff and some of our volunteers who have been involved with this project speak to the collection and the history of the town. I think people would really enjoy that. But given the limitations right now of the pandemic, we've got that kind of in the planning stage, but again, can at least make the collection fully available online for people to take a look at home. So, Jackie, do you mind going to the next slide? The next project that we received funding for was to install drainage around the Claflin Garage Richards house. This house has existed on its present location since about 1660. It sits on wooden sills. It is made of wood. Preserving a wooden structure of this age requires constant vigilance and care. We're thankful for the support of the CPC and the town of Wenham for the work that we have done, in addition to a number of private donors and the Wenham Village Improvement Society, who are really instrumental in having the house repainted in 2019, which also it really needed. So this house, I think, has continued to receive great support from the community, and also great interest through our school field trip program and other uses that we do have with visitors. The water mitigation was really key to move the water away from the site and to contain it in order to try to dry out the yard. You may be aware that the water table in downtown Wenham is fairly high. It's been really difficult, to dry out the lawn there, and with appropriate engineering and with this project, we will be able to do that. Jackie, if you go to the next slide. This is just a little snapshot from the engineering plan that we had that basically ties all of the downspouts into a 4,000 gallon cistern. It reclaims all of the water. If we were able to one day fund like a sprinkler system or something, if that were appropriate with the water board, we could use this water in this cistern for other kinds of purposes. The engineers were able to engineer this for a 25-year storm event. If there's a larger storm event, the downspouts and the engineering are designed, to have overflow discharge. The cistern then connects to an infiltration system that holds the water until it basically is reabsorbed, by the ground, and it's like purified before it goes back into the aquifer system. Next slide, Jackie. And this just shows like some of the detail. You can see like the downspouts now are directed into like great stone, directions. I'm getting the exact word for it, but eventually, this stonework captures the runoff from the downspout. It runs through those green pipes to the cistern. The cistern is that large concrete block that you see in the top right photo, 4,000 gallons. It is accessible through like a manhole cover that you can see that's located in the front of the museum's lawn. And then it flows into this infiltration system, which is in the photo with those blue kind of long domed like things. So we already know like the system is working. We had some pretty big rainstorms while the project was going in. It was capturing the water. I went out there and stood and looked at it, and it was half full, so you can say success that it was really working to move the water away. It also connects to a sump pump in the basement of the old house. We've had perennial water in the basement of that house for years and years. I've been involved with the museum for a long time, even before I was the director. And with those big rainstorms, this is the first time that it's been dry down there. So it's just great to go down there and have a dry basement with fairly minimal humidity and know that all this water is being captured into this wastewater management system. Jackie, I want to go to the next slide. As a side benefit, this wasn't a direct outcome of the grant, but I think it's going to be beneficial to everyone. It's really going to improve the usability of our front yard, because when they excavated the holes to put in the cistern and the infiltration system, that dirt, was still there. So the contractor re-spread it around, regraded it. We're now going to have a new flat, even lawn. Our lawn before this was very lumpy and bumpy and wet and buggy and all of that. So, we're excited that we now, once the grass grows back, should be able to have a really welcoming and nice outdoor space for people. We do programs and activities out there that are consistent with our mission and the historic district. And we're looking forward to really being able to continue to use that, particularly, I think, as we head into this summer, where hopefully, the pandemic does begin to subside, but the opportunity to perhaps do more things outdoors could be really important for us, as our business has been impacted through occupancy requirements and other things over this last year. We do have a little bit of a holdback, sort of in conversation with our contractor. We've got to sort of wrap up the grant funding, and I can connect with Jackie on that, but just to make sure that he's going to put the grass down for us. And then I think there are other programmatic possibilities that our staff and volunteers are interested in. Like, for example, we could now put back some more historic type of plantings and kind of plant the kinds of things that residents who lived in the house may have had over different points of time. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities there. And that project essentially, but for the lawn, is done. So I apologize for how it looks. I wish we had more snow so we could kind of camouflage our front dirt, but eventually it will be resolved. And again, we thank everybody on this committee and the people of Wenham for their help in making this grant go forward. This year, FY21, the Wenham Museum has submitted an application for capital improvements to its HVAC system. Just as a bit of background, we have 5 HVAC units in the building that serve 5 zones, 1 unit per zone. Presently, we have 2 units that are in need of replacement. I have been working throughout my tenure as the director to upgrade the climate control system. These units were installed when the museum was renovated in the late 90s, in 1996 and 1997. There was a big campaign to renovate and expand the museum. That's when all the HVAC units were installed. I've been able since 2016 to replace 3 of them through a Massachusetts Cultural Council Cultural Facilities Fund grant, which is a matching grant. We had to raise funds to match that, then also raise some other private donations on top of that to replace 3. So it's taken about 4 years to replace 3 of these units. I have continued to file MCC Cultural Facilities Fund grants since our first award back in 2016, and we haven't been successful in that regard. I have reached out to the program staff at MCC to see why that is, and they basically said, you're not doing anything wrong, your application is fine, it's just we need to spread this funding around, the county, around the state, and effectively sort of, you've gotten your grant for a little while and, come back with a different project and maybe things will be different. So we have been working to explore, other forms of funding, but frankly, things have been somewhat complicated, honestly, by COVID-19. The museum has had to close for 5 months over the last year and then reopen with new occupancy restrictions and many changes to our operations to weather this time. So we've had to really lean heavily on our donors to keep the museum going. So there's significant pressure on them at this point for funding general operations. And I don't think there's as much room in the donor base for capital projects, which is why this year we've asked for the consideration of the CPC and the town. So Jackie, if you don't mind going to the next slide. This is a picture of our flat roof where our HVAC units are located. This flat roof is on the southeast corner of our building. It basically is next to our neighbors located at 130 Main Street, the yellow clapboard house. You can't really see it from the road. It's kind of tucked back in there. All 5 units are on this space. 3 of them, again, are new, and 2 of them will require replacement. And there's a close-up photo of those 2 on the next slide, Jackie. These are the 2 units that date to the late 90s. We have been maintaining them. We do preventative and seasonal maintenance on them twice a year. They're up to date on, filters and all of that. Obviously, this past spring, when we had to close down during COVID, we had extensive meetings with our HVAC provider about building filtration, ventilation, all of that. I've been assured they are working, but it's sort of like if you've driven a car for 200,000 miles, there comes a point where your mechanic may tell you it's really not worth it to invest too much more into these units. And that's really the point that we're at. One of them is having a heat exchanger that's beginning to rust. The other one is still functioning, but's had many problems with replacing fans, ball bearings and fans, things like that. The repair costs for these 2 units are creeping up, year over year. Generally speaking, our seasonal maintenance for all of the units is about $2,000. We do that in the spring and again in the fall. Because of the level of parts and repairs that these units have needed over the last few years, it's really starting to add up and become more important that we really pursue replacing them sooner rather than later. It's also possible that they could fail. I mean, given their age, no one wants to guarantee that these are going to continue to work. As of right now, they are. We have the guys out here checking on them frequently. They're moving the air the way they're supposed to through the building, but they are aged. They are at the end of their useful life. So they have advised us to pursue replacing them as soon as possible. On the next slide, Jackie, these 2 units serve 2 zones in the building. 1 unit serves Burnham Hall, as per the photo on the left. In that space, we do, in normal times, much of our educational and field trip programming. This photo predates the pandemic. We have not been hosting groups of that size or what have you at the museum at this time, but we serve many K-3 students from across Essex County and Southern New Hampshire on our programming on colonial life. We also use, we have about 3,000 to 4,000 students a year who come through for field trips. We also use that space for the museum's brown bag lunch program, other public programs, and of course our events like Attic Treasures, our craft fairs, other special events the museum hosts on an annual basis. And we do also rent this space out for private functions and children's birthday parties. So it is a very busy and well-used and important part of the museum for not only our educational programming, but also our revenue generating capabilities for special events. On the right-hand side, there's a snapshot from one of our model train galleries. One of the other units in question serves the lower level of the museum, where our permanent train room is located, and as well as our family discovery gallery. These rooms are both very beloved parts of the building. They have a high volume of traffic. For many folks, the Wenham Museum is synonymous with our train collections. These are important collections, and we do want to continue to take care of them. We do occasionally receive, visitor feedback and staff and volunteer feedback about the climate control in these places that, in Burnham Hall, it's either sort of feast or famine. It's either way too hot in there or way too cold. And some of that is a function of the age of the system. in the lower level of the building, which is below grade. We do have challenges with humidity in the summer. We do anticipate that some of our drainage project around the house will hopefully help mitigate, moving some water away from our facility. We'll have some minor improvements there, but the humidity does make running the trains a challenge. Many of these trains are antiques, they're vintage, they don't like running in high humidity settings. We do track temperature and humidity across our facility with wireless data loggers that we have acquired through an NEH grant for conservation purposes to keep an eye on climate. So we do know that we do receive pretty substantial spikes in the building in July and August. The last unit that we installed, it has a built-in dehumidification feature, and that would be a feature that we would be looking to install and is included within the pricing for the 2 units for these zones, which is important, again, not only for the collections, but also for the comfort of guests that are in the building. Jackie, on the next slide, if you don't mind. This is just a picture of what these data loggers look like. They look like really like small remote controls, and they're located actually all around our facility in every space. And we do track that so we can keep an eye on what is happening and also measure the outcomes and the success of this project that way, in addition to visitor and staff and volunteer feedback. And then on the next slide, Jackie. So before the pandemic, we were serving about 35,000 people a year. Last year, we had a 21,000 person drop in attendance and visitation because of COVID-19. We do anticipate there will be a robust return to visitation eventually following vaccination and herd immunity, and that the museum continues to be valued and appreciated and needed by the community. Presently, our members and our donors have come through for us in a huge way to keep the basics of the museum functioning. We have cut our operating budget from about $45,000 a month to $25,000 a month. Of that $25,000, about $9,000 are fixed facility costs for utilities, heating and cooling, and insurance. So we're running very leanly right now. We have had some good success with fundraising for our annual fund. I think this fiscal year, people understand that we're not able to really be open and to make significant money through the gate. So folks are renewing their membership or continuing to make a donation in order to help us through this. I say this just by means of, trying to address any concerns of, well, we hear in the news a lot of, businesses or cultural organizations or what have you are not doing well. I just want to reassure everybody, the museum will survive this. It's not been fun every day inside the museum at this moment, but we will survive it. We will have to have a period of ramping back up again once sort of normal public life resumes. But when that happens, and while we are currently operating, we still have a duty and an obligation to care for collections and to provide the most comfortable possible experience for visitors. This is, a relatively urgent need. These units could fail at any time. We don't necessarily have substantial other avenues of, savings or what have you. We do have a line of credit. If disaster really struck, our board would have to meet and determine if that were an appropriate use of the line of credit to make this kind of capital investment. But before doing that, we are doing what we can to explore every avenue of funding. And given that this kind of capital expenditure for historic preservation type purposes is contemplated by the statute, we saw fit to file an application this year to really ask for the help of the people of the town of Wenham to make this investment, particularly in this year. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that anyone has. Before that, it may be worth noting or just reminding everyone that the Wenham Museum presently does have a grant agreement and a preservation easement in place with the town of Wenham related to our FY18 grant for the house. So I would request that if we were successful in having this application approved by this committee and ultimately have the application proceed to town meeting, that we would effectively have the same terms that we have in our existing grant agreement with any subsequent grant award. And that and I'm happy to if you all need a copy of that, I'm sure Jackie has it, but I have, all of that documentation if that's helpful. So just like to thank everyone so much for volunteering. I know, your chairman was very kind in thanking the town employees, but we need town volunteers too. I live here in town. I need volunteers at the museum, just like the town needs volunteers to function. So thank you all very much for sort of giving up your Wednesday evening, to do this. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thanks, Kristen. Committee members, questions, comments? Barbara?
Yes, Kristen, as you know, I'm a long-term supporter of the Wenham Museum and I love it dearly, especially with our affiliation with the WVIS. You are our daughter and we care about you dearly. My only concern is this application is under historical preservation. And I guess we could kind of wind our way to that point where we're saying if we don't have HVAC, we don't have historical preservation. But I'm not really quite sure if that falls under the CPA rules or not. So I don't know if Patrick has any idea about that.
I do. So this is something I looked at last year for the community house with their system. And yeah, it does fall because it is preserving the structure and the artifacts. So I believe it would qualify, and I can check with Stuart as well.
Okay, that would be a good idea, I think, because it's a lot of money for preservation. That's really kind of, I know you guys have been maintaining it, and I know it's been a financial struggle for a while, and I give you so much credit for working so hard to keep this organization going, because it is a jewel in our town and in Essex County. But I just want to make sure we're following the right rules.
Absolutely.
Other members? Janet?
I would just like to say that the museum is such a gem. If we can do it, I'm just so in favor of this. It is a lot of money, Barbara, I agree, but it's not a lot of money in the scheme of what the museum is really worth to the town of Wenham and to the whole North Shore.
Oh, I agree with you, Janet, 100%. I just want to make sure we're following the rules.
No, that makes a lot of sense. We want to do it the right way, but it's awful to say, but $46,000 today is not a lot of money. Sorry, Kristen, I know it's a lot for you because you really need to do this.
Well, and we have really tried to do this every other way than through CPA, and it's just reaching a critical point that we just have to try. And I know you're all very thoughtful in your deliberations and whatever the outcome would be, whether you would think about funding it in whole or in part or what have you, it helps us. We really appreciate it. And we need the help, especially this year. So.
Leo?
Kristen, you're eloquent. You make a very convincing presentation. And your cause is certainly worthwhile. I have a couple of questions. So you mentioned at the start of your presentation that you didn't use the whole $1/6 of $1 million that we gave you in the last 5 years.
That's right.
You didn't use. Do you know how much you might have left over?
I'm reluctant to put a number out there. That's why I said that it's in the low thousands, I think, because I'm afraid if I tell you it's going to be 5,000, if I'm here next week and it ends up it's only 3, I don't want you to ask me what happened to the $2,000. I'm not taking it to Nordstrom's or something, so I want to make sure that I have the numbers right, which I think might require me to double check with my bookkeeper and just town hall and make sure we have this, because we try to stretch every dollar, whether we're spending our dollars or your dollars or the town's dollars. We really try to economize when we can, and would do the same with this project if we were, if that became.
What you haven't used, Kristen's not close to the 47 that you need now. No.
It's less than $10,000.
It sounds like it might cover another year's maintenance, so that we could probably have another year maybe the CPA would, the state CPA would be good to us, and we could save up enough money to make it easier for us to give it to you next year. This one doesn't sound like an emergency. The other three the other sixth of $1 million that we gave you in the last 5 years sounded to me like an emergency. Each one of them sounded like an emergency, and
Right.
I voted for them.
Right.
This one doesn't really sound like an emergency like the other ones did. It
Well-
sounds like it could wait, and it sounds like you do have enough money to this year get by.
Point of order, Leo,
Yeah.
she can't use those funds for maintenance. So
maintenance.
those funds have to come back. By law, they have to come back to us.
Right.
She can't reallocate them.
Right. And you're still holding them. I mean, the town has those funds, like they're not
Right.
in our bank account, they're in your bank account. And I mean, and I don't, it's not it's that, so they're still working, right? So I'm not coming you to here saying we don't have any heat. That would truly be an emergency.
Of course.
I have been cautioned by our technicians that is possible given the age of these machines and the age of the heat exchangers, that they could fail at any time. They cannot guarantee anything to me. And this has been an ongoing challenge with all of these units. And I feel like the institution's been very lucky. We haven't had a disaster. We do have a line of credit, as I said, but that's, debt. And this is not a great time to be taking on debt. And also too, if this committee makes the unfortunate decision that this can't be funded, if I have to go out and then try to fundraise from other folks or go back to the townspeople of Wenham in the capacity of the museum asking for donations, I at least want to be able to say, I did this, I did this, I did this. These are all the things that I tried. And now you, donor base, I have to come back to you again and say, we have no heat. I need everybody to give another $100 so that we can, replace the HVAC units. So I just, need to do my due diligence on both sides of this. And I think, again, we've really have tried to pay for this other ways. It's very challenging, right now. So that was like a big part of the conversation of, again, trying to appeal to our local community in this way, instead of asking everyone, okay, instead of reaching into your checkbook again, to make a donation, we've all, myself included, have paid the tax bill surcharge. The money is there, it's sitting there. Would you be willing to consider, using it for this purpose?
Kristen, I'm just asking questions and making comments because these are things that run through my mind.
Right.
I don't know what runs through the other 8 committee people's minds, but we're passing out the town money, and I feel like I have to ask these questions, and I feel like I have to allocate the money where it's needed, where it's appropriate.
Right.
And so these are why I ask these questions.
No,
It's an emergency, and if it
right,
can
no.
hold out. So I ask these questions because I want the answers myself, because I want to be influenced to the positive or to the negative. And
Right.
and I hope the questions I ask help the other committee people too to make a judgment. All right. But thank you for your presentation.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for your time.
The committee members?
So, yeah, no, I would just say that, I think if you look at your HVAC issues as a whole, that we could say that, you've received substantial partial funding for 3 of the 5 units, right? And then your request is partial of the total. It happens to be 2 complete units.
That's right. And that's why I did, say that we have already funded the replacement of 3 of the 5.
Yeah.
We've spent about $58,000 already on that. And then I also have gotten a small grant for a whole house dehumidifier for our collection storage space. So if you add that 5,000 to that, we're over $60,000 we've raised to address, heating and cooling and dehumidification within the museum already.
Yeah.
over 4 years.
Yeah, I know it's good to put it in perspective. Yeah. And this, I'll ask this question just because it might be on Leo's mind too. It crossed mine, what would the implication be if we funded one of the units and not the other? It sounds like from what you're saying, not that great because still the other one could fail and that would put you in the same kind of jeopardy. And perhaps it's a little less expensive to do both at once. Do you know anything about that? Does it save you any money to have the contract of doing both at the same time?
It does save some expenses because when they replace these units, the HVAC contractor has to work with a crane subcontractor because they unbolt the units. They actually pick them up, carry them over the museum, put them onto a flatbed truck and take them away and then do the reverse with the new units. And it's something to see. We make sure everybody has insurance because it's very nerve-wracking watching a multi-ton thing, come over your building. And they also have to work with electricians, roofers, and sheet metal vendors to reattach, the units and the ductwork, repair the roofs, reroute the electrical, etc. So there is an economy of scale here in terms of those support vendors that work with the HVAC folks to do that. The crane being one of the biggest expenses at a couple $1,000s. So they do prefer to do that, with one fell swoop. When we've done the last few units, we were able to time it with them so that they were, on site and off site before town hall opened, to not really impact the ability of residents to get in and out of town hall or employees, to park conveniently, what have you, and go to work. So we've done this several times now and kind of sort of have it down, I think, with the building. So there's definitely an economy of scale there. If we were only able to replace one unit with CPA funding, then we'd have to really, I think, consult with our vendor about which unit, in their opinion, is the most urgently, one in need of replacing. And then we'd have to do continued fundraising to replace the second while hoping that we could basically keep it running, before it.
So it's good to hear all the ins and outs of it.
I was just thinking that, the lower floor with the train collection and everything else, versus Burnham Hall.
Right.
It's
More
like
people probably you would think would be served in the train room, probably, then,
Well, and also, you don't, like you said, those trains don't like working in humidity. So if you were going to only do one, maybe that's the one you do. And I'm not very bullish on thinking about Burnham Hall is going to be used extensively over the next 6 to 8 months. I don't think that's happening.
That's probably true. I can also say that the zone that serves Burnham Hall also serves the public restrooms. That's all part of that same back part of the building, like where the coat closet is and the rear hallway, what have you. That's all one zone. So I think, the public that is visiting and what have you are still going to the bathroom. I think you are right that we're not likely to be in, having big indoor fundraising events or large indoor field trips, for a while. As of right now, I'm hopeful that for the next school year, we can bring that back. We may not be able to. It's somewhat, I think, going to depend on how the vaccine rollout goes and what the public health guidance becomes at that point. But even if it's not this fall, it will eventually return. Eventually we will be able to.
Right. But isn't that a different fiscal year?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking is we fund one for the train room and everything else, and then see what happens by next school year. And if we have the funds, I think that's probably the best way to go, in my view.
So that's more a conversation for next week as to the actual funding mechanism. So good idea. Anyone else? Chris, I just want to say that I I had been on your website. I was looking for the Conant collection. I just found it.
Okay, Yeah.
I would say put a link on the front page.
it will
'cause
be. Like,
once
once the whole collection is up, we will do that. Yeah,
I will
for
say
sure.
it is amazing. It
Yeah.
is his self-portrait is beautiful,
I know.
and the baseball team's fantastic. But
Yeah, baseball has always been big in Wenham, really,
Yep.
going back many, many decades. So, yeah,
fantastic.
it's great.
Oops, sorry.
It's Elizabeth. I just want to say that I would agree to full funding because I don't see the point of putting this in two parts. It may turn out to be more expensive that way if it's done in two payments. And it's such a unique institution that Wenham has. It certainly is worthy of its maintenance.
Yeah, that's the problem, maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, we all know these old houses, everything takes a
I know,
lot.
Elizabeth, but maintenance is not covered under CPA. That's the question I had that hopefully we can resolve.
Yep,
Well,
that's it.
Maintain,
Yeah.
but
It's in my notes. So I will definitely call Stuart.
yes, I know you will, Patrick. You're good at that.
No, it'll be, I mean, I think he'll be clear about it one way or the other.
Yes, right. And we need to be clear too. So I hesitate to use the word maintenance because I know that is something that is not covered under the CPA.
All right. Well, Kristen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, we're going to vote. We'll do deliberations and voting on the 28th, and you are more than welcome to attend. Encourage you to attend.
Okay, I have I would love to be there. I have a Board of Trustees meeting that evening from about 6:30 to 8. So I do not know how long your deliberations are likely to go, but I will participate or see if I can get another representative of the institution to participate, if that's appropriate or possible.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
We like to argue, so we go a long time.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Last but definitely not least is Affordable Housing Trust with Joe Hostler. Joe has come to us with a request for $300,000. So I will, and again, Joe, I want to extend the same invitation to you that I've extended to the other groups. You're definitely within our purview, affordable housing. So if we want to get together and have a joint meeting, would love to. I speak for the group. Hopefully everyone really wants to get together with these other groups as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I actually just want to reflect that reflect that with us as we think of ourselves as part of the extension of the CPA or the CPC. So we definitely want to make sure that we're working in touch with you. And I think we have in many projects. So,
yeah. Right. So turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Well, first, Mr. Chair, and everyone else, thank you for letting us take your time tonight. Given what Janet said, that $46,000 isn't that much in these days, what we're asking for is. So to give you, Jackie, if you can move to the next slide, I wanted to, given that what we're doing is we're asking for a very large sum of money, which we understand, and that we don't have a specific targeted spend for this money, I want to make this a little bit more of a discussion if that's possible. I don't want to take up your time with too many slides. I want to just reintroduce the Housing Trust and our mission.
No.
Why?
So the mission of the trust is to provide for the preservation and creation of affordable housing within the town of Wenham for the benefit of low and moderate income households. Jackie, if you don't mind going to the next slide. The background, as we all know, it was created out of the housing plan of 2008. The trust has been funded mostly through two large projects, developments of within the town. But the mission was, we did an action plan in 2018-19 that looked to try to prioritize how we wanted to move forward with the plan to meet many objectives that the trust has as provided or as mandated to us by the residents of Wenham. I've listed them here in the bottom, the 4 bullet points. I'll say that the second bullet point, prioritizing allocation of funds to achieve Chapter 40B, we have had that as our predominant mandate to this date. We are happy with where we are currently, where we have that in sight. And we're thinking about, Jackie, if you don't mind going to the next slide, thinking about how we evolve now that that is within sight. So what we're doing is we're asking for $300,000 to replenish the Affordable Housing Trust. We started with, well, I should say that when over the last 3 years, we have committed about $620,000 within multiple projects, and that in the plan that we had first set up, the action plan that we had set up was to achieve the 10% threshold for the Chapter 40B. We were thinking that we were going to need to spend around $900,000 to obtain the 26 units that we needed to get to the 10% threshold. To deviate for a second, Wenham is in a very is a leadership role within the state, where we have at 9.1%, we're in the top 20% of all towns within the state, getting to that 10% level. And now we have committed over 500,000 just in the last 2 years to get to that 47 new units, which is including our participation within the Maplewoods project and the Habitat for Humanity. With those 47 units, we are now, the town is going to be slightly over 12% in our level of low and middle moderate income households. So we've now given ourselves a lot of breathing room, so we will be protected against adverse 40B developments. So now with that kind of in our rearview mirror, it's now for us to look forward on how we want to evolve. And up to this point, the way we've been thinking about it is that we've had dual mandates in many ways. Though they're shared between the two, they are still prioritized differently. We've had to work within the state's goals or priorities for the 40B, but also we've had to think about making sure that we provide for local housing as much as we can. Now that we've hit the 40B threshold or the state's mandates, we get to think about how we want to prioritize future future spend within the trust. Next slide, please, Jackie. So this is just to show you where we think or how we look at our current balance sheet for the trust. We have, when we commit funds, just so that everyone knows, when we commit funds, we usually do it not as grants, but as mortgages that have typically a 30 or 40 year life to them with renewal periods. It is our way to maintain some level of fiscal control over these assets so that they stay restricted. If any of these houses move out of the restriction, we get to call on the debt. The Friend Court was one that we inherited at the essentially at the start of the trust, where the initial mandate for the trust was to buy down, do a buy down of market housing to bring it down to affordable. Unfortunately, that was done probably at a very poor time of the 2008 in front of the correction. But since then, we've put money into 40 Hall Street. I'll get into this 2B Stockwell in a second, and then we've committed $250,000 of the trust funds to Maplewoods. All of these are in a mortgage stance. So right now, the trust is looking at trying to figure out how we move forward. And what we've done is we know that we want to focus, we want to prioritize our needs now for local initiatives. 2B Stockwell is one that we have just recently done, and it was good that we had the funds available because we were able to act fast on it. 2B Stockwell is up in Parsons Hill. It was it was an owned affordable housing unit on our affordable housing inventory. We had the opportunity to purchase it and convert it into a rental. Within the town, one of the needs that was highlighted within the action plan was affordable rental units. Because of the price of 2B Stockwell and for the rent that we can get, we are able to hit a number of mandates. One is that it will maintain a presence on the inventory list. It will convert it to a rental property, and it is a side benefit is that it's a very nice fiscal or a very nice economic return for the trust, which has had cash sitting at 0 rates up to now. We still have $281,000, but we do know that there are future commitments that we need to be planning for, and that's why we're coming and asking for some funds. Next slide, please, Jackie. So of the multiple initiatives, the 9 initiatives in our action plan, the last one was one I wanted to highlight, which is that we knew that if we were to hit our 40B 10% goal, we were going to need to think about how we wanted to refocus. We were planning on 2020 to be a period for the trust to be a learning year, to explore different innovative ideas that have been used around the state or as other states to help meet the needs for affordable housing within the town, serve the people to make sure that we can maintain the quality and characteristics that we love about the town, and maintain the integrity of the people within it. And unfortunately, because of COVID, it's a normal excuse that a lot of people are using. COVID kind of pushed off our plans, but we were able to take advantage of the opportunity with 2B Stockwell to, given our flexibility and given our abilities to act fast, put money to work in a good way towards meeting some of our local objectives. Next slide, please. So I'm going to leave as much time as I can for questions and comments. I know it's getting late on your time, so I wanted to move through these fast. But we're trying to think about how we're refining our activities going forward. Of course, we want to continue to act smart or be smart about how we add new affordable units, leveraging public-private partnerships. We want to optimize our current inventory to best situate it for the needs of the town. And we do know that there is new legislation coming down about multifamily housing by right for commuter towns, and Wenham is one of those. So we think we need to have funds available to make sure that we can act in the best interests of the residents. We also, through a number of our committee members, are looking for ways to be innovative within this process. We are considered a leader within the state with our devotion towards affordable housing, and we want to maintain that momentum that we've been building. So the last thing that I'll say is that when we talked about the mission, there were 2 things: creation and preservation. We have a number of our units within our inventory that are aging, and we feel like we might be in need of helping preserve or to extend those the lives of those assets. And so we are thinking that we need to start to build up assets or build up funds in front of what could be a very large and substantial push to revitalize some of the aging inventory that we have. So I think that's it, Jackie. If you could go to the next slide, I think I'm pretty much done. So again, I went through that quickly. I know that there's going to be much more of a discussion around this rather than a presentation. So I wanted to give you as much time to ask questions and have a dialogue.
Committee members? Leo, is that a question?
My biggest motive out of the four categories is, of course, open space. I've been talking about it since the beginning. I think it's 15 years now. To tell you the truth, I'm going to be for this, approving this application, because affordable housing, if your plan gets us to the 10% and eliminates 40B, the potential of 40B, that will drive down the price of open space in this town to where we can afford it. That's been the problem in the past. 40B, when a Parsons Hill comes up, or a Spring Hill, or any development, we can't afford it because the developers are frothing. So this is probably one application I'm going to be in favor of. Let me ask a couple of questions, though, Joe. When you go after, we need 26 units, you say?
We needed them with Maple Woods. We're now about 25 above what we needed.
If we get Maple Woods, okay?
If we get Maple Woods.
And that will protect us against 40B for quite a while. And that probably will give us time to save for the open space that's been driven down in price. Mm-hmm. When you go for affordable units, how much do you think you have to budget for each unit? Like, for instance, if you're going to get 45 units at Maple Woods, what's our total donation towards Maple Woods?
Well, I think the town did $1 million total.
That's how much?
Yeah, and we did 200, and the trust did 250,000. So when we built the plan,
that's $1,250,000.
No. Total million out of the entire. We were 250 of that million.
Yeah. How much is the town gonna contribute towards Maple Woods?
Well, the trust did 250, and the total commitment was $1 million. So 750 is coming from the town, I believe.
CPA, it's CPA funds.
CPA.
But the town itself, there's going to be $1.25 million coming out of our town.
No, just 1 million. Just 1 million.
Just 1 million.
Right.
And Harbor Light or whoever's doing it's going to put in the rest, the building. So $1 million. This is only costing us about less than 25,000 a unit.
When we did our plan, we were thinking that we would need to do more things like Friend Court or the Habitat, which took us up to an average expectation of 50,000 per unit.
50.
We actually, well, that was our expectation, but the trust itself has leveraged our money to do it at about a $10,000 unit.
So in other words, Hull Street only costs us about 10,000 a unit?
No. On average, meaning we blend in Maple Woods, we blend in Hall Street. So we're looking at this as a portfolio.
Oh, when you average them all out.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, I'm for the application because we just have to eliminate a 40B. I mean, that's probably what's driven our tax rate to one of the highest in the state. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Anyone else comments? See hands? Okay, so I'll weigh in. So the difference between the AHT and the CPC, CPA is the mechanism for dispersing funds.
Correct.
So so obviously we have selectmen issues now. So town meeting, the general populace decides to disperse CPA funds. AHT funds are dispersed through the AHT and the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
It has always been my contention that, well, CPA, it's nice to have the people have a voice. And where you don't have a project in mind right now, we would be taking, so we've already encumbered, we've cleaned out our affordable housing bucket to Maple Woods, and it has now been replenished by 2 years. And per conversation with Jackie just recently, I believe we're going to be just north of $100,000 in encumbered. All the funds are encumbered, but these are more encumbered for affordable housing, just in that bucket. So if we were to do this, it would be 100,000 of affordable housing only funds and 200,000 of general use funds, general use, the within our pyramid. So it's just it's something for people to think about. Where should the AHT is more nimble than we are, because we're subject to town meeting. If we have a special, then we're twice a year. Otherwise, we're once a year. If a project came up, we could ask for a special. We haven't done it. We had a special this year, last year, but specials are rare in Wenham. So you say you have future commitments. Can you expand on those?
Well, so Parsons Hill, there is an opportunity that may present itself for Habitat to come in and potentially build 2 units. Now, Parsons Hill developer, I think, will donate the land plus some, but we will most likely be asked by Habitat to help out.
Joe, I'm sorry, excuse me. It's not Parsons Hill, it's Spring Hill.
Spring Hill. I'm sorry.
Dodgers Row. Yeah, just so we don't get confused.
Yeah, no, I apologize. Spring Hill. Too many hills. So yes, Spring Hill developer is likely to donate some funds, or donate a piece of land plus some funds to Habitat, but they will most likely need to access more funds for that. Now, again, what you said was it is our ability to act fast and be a little bit more flexible is the benefit that we want to try to bring. And so it's not to, I want to make sure that everybody understands, we're not trying to take a voice away from the people. It's more to make sure that we can act fast for the residents of the town. Within our action plan is to continue to do outreach into the community to find what type of programs they would like. One area that we have yet to be able to really embrace has been what we've heard, well, 2 areas. One is a potential to keep people in their homes or find ways to make the tax burden easier for some homeowners, as well as producing local affordable units that would be targeted more for local needs, which would not meet the state's state requirements for housing inventory. But now that if Maple Woods goes through, we don't need to worry about that anymore. So my thought is that we're hitting the time where we get to have fun with thinking about affordable housing and how best to optimize it to make sure that we're keeping the community, the qualities and the characteristics that we like of the community in place.
And are your rules a little less stringent than ours as far as what can be done with the funds? We can't maintain. It's just something that we can't do.
Right. No, and Margaret, you would know better than I, but I believe any funds that you guys push to us, we still need to abide by the CPA rules. Is that not true, Margaret?
Yeah, it is true, essentially, that anything that you funnel through needs to follow CPA regulations. But they're a little less stringent than trying to get something on the SHI.
Right.
And just so we're clear, we don't allocate funds. We only recommend to town meeting, and town meeting allocates them. So, okay. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
One question I have, Joe, it's just, if it should be, to our advantage to, not give you one large chunk, how would that impact your ability to go forward? Let's say if you had to come back for another installment or next year.
No, again, we understand the obligations that you hold. We are trying to figure out how best to blend the needs, knowing that we don't have immediate. It goes to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So think of this as a strategic request, not a tactical where we have a specific need.
Yeah.
But we do, as I said, we have 280,000 of uncommitted dollars, so we're not strapped for cash with needs. However, we do want, as opportunities present themselves, such as 2B Stockwell, that was something that it was a $120,000 purchase that we were able to execute on relatively quickly, and not only produce a need for the town, but also, or address a need for the town, but provide an economical solution that was advantageous.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I think the fact that we are not nimble is, very frustrating to us. So it's a great partnership for us to be able to, work with you on affordable housing.
Well, and that's one thing I want to make sure that we impress upon you is that I think we've been good stewards to capital, focus on affordable housing. And given that we are asking for so much, I want to make sure that that's impressed upon you is that we do value this money and hold it dear.
Good, thanks.
Anyone else? Well, Joe, thank you very much, and we'll get together. We'll try to schedule a joint meeting coming up. But again, deliberations and votes will happen next week on the 28th, and you're more than welcome and encouraged to attend.
I will. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you.
You too.
Mr. Chairman.
I can't take a motion to adjourn, Leo.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust. You mentioned
what about Concom? How would Concom like to come in?
No. The Concom is not one of the four categories. You mentioned the Affordable Trust. You mentioned the historic. You mentioned the recreation, was it? You didn't mention the Open Space Committee.
No, I did. That's Open Space and Rec. That's the group that went through the 61 days.
You didn't say Open Space Committee.
No, I did. Open Space. Leo, I was on that committee.
Thank you for clarifying it for me.
It's Open Space and Rec. And Open Space and Rec we've already met with, actually, for the Greenbelt presentation.
Right.
They're near and dear to my heart.
Did you have anything on the agenda before I move to adjourn?
Yes, I do. Our wonderful town staff would like to update us on our numbers.
Oh, God.
So I'll keep this very quick, everybody, because I know it's already 8:45 and we've been at this for a little while. And I will also send out this PowerPoint as well as the other 3 PowerPoints from tonight in an email before I go, so you can look at it over the weekend before we meet next week. These are just preliminary projections for FY22 for you to have preparing for next week. I will say that these are very conservative, and I still haven't gotten any guidance from DOR, the Department of Revenue, or the coalition. They have not released their FY22 guidance for us, so I went very conservative with these projections, but this is just to give you an idea of some of the dollars that you'll be able to allocate to recommend to town meeting for allocation. So as folks might remember, our preliminary FY21 budget was based on a 13.8% state match, or roughly $51,750. So this was our revenue for last year, how much we put aside for appropriations for the 10% for each policy area, our budgetary reserve, and the administrative appropriation. So roughly $426,000 last year. And the only appropriation that was made at town meeting in July was the town hall debt. As Patrick mentioned earlier in the meeting, our actual state match was much more significant at 59.2% altogether. So if you look to the bottom, you can see that our actual state match subtracted by our projected state match means that we'll have roughly $191,950 of additional revenue for fiscal 21 that we did not anticipate, mostly due to the fact that the trust fund revenue system, the fees for the Registry of Deeds, are filling the state coffers much more quickly. And while there are still communities adding CPA every year, most of the big cities have done so, and we've now seen that kind of settle and plateau in the projection. So hopefully we'll see good news about the state match next year. But as we had to do, I believe 2 years ago, when we go to town meeting in May, we will need to move the $63,971 to each of the 3 policy areas to line up with our accounting before you make your fiscal 22 allocations. For the preliminary projections for fiscal 22, we're looking at a $390,000 surcharge locally, and right now a 15% state match at $58,500. Again, that's a very conservative number. I'm hoping in the next couple of days to maybe get more information from the state, but at this point, across the board, they're being very conservative with us for all state aid and state monies. The trust fund is in very good shape because the housing market seems to be doing very good and there's a lot of activity at the Registry of Deeds, but there's no point in telling when that might change. A lot of the economic hardship we're hearing about for municipalities is going to come more in fiscal 23 than in fiscal 22, as the state revenue lags a little bit and assessed values lag even more. But at this point, this is the conservative numbers that we're looking at. And we do still have these current dollars for outstanding projects. So roughly right now we have $939,000 that are in our coffers, but have already been allocated to projects. And again, I can send this out so folks can take a deeper dive at this. I think you'll recognize a lot of the bigger players, as well as, Kristen went over the museum projects tonight. So this is where we are at this point. And I do expect at least 3 or 4 of these to be expended by the end of this fiscal year, as folks may remember, but for those who don't, these monies do not end or get encumbered at the end of every fiscal year. CPA continues until the project is complete. So hopefully, it's good to close them out and keep our books organized. And as you can see, there is a slight accounting error in our current system that's counting the bench twice. And I've already let the finance office know about that in our records. So that's going to be rectified. So that'll eventually work its way back into the open space that it's being counted twice. It was 2 applications and it shouldn't have happened. But I've let finance know, so they're going to correct that.
We also know the bench is not going to happen. So eventually that money will come back to us.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and that'll be something that once there's a new open space and conservation coordinator, we'll go through the paperwork process for all that with the open space committee. But we don't like to reconcile it in our books until that process has taken place. But thank you, that's correct. So these are some preliminary projections for the policy areas based on the additional revenue from fiscal 21 and the projected revenue for fiscal 22. So you can see the fund balance as of 7/1/20, and then the revenue for each of the accounts. As folks may remember, open space is at a premium. Historic preservation and community housing are a little bit lower at about $150,000 each at this point. And then the budgetary reserve based on the projected revenue for fiscal 22 will be about $305,000. So this is where we are right now for those 4 policy area funds. I don't know if folks have any questions at this point that I can answer, but that's just the update for tonight. I'll send this out, and I also will say that we'll have additional numbers next week as well. I'm getting the Q4 investment income so that we can include that into our projections as well, because CPA has a very large portfolio, and a lot of the project money stays with us until the actual dollars are spent, and then we cut a check typically to the entity. Those monies stay in our coffers and we get interest on them and investment income. So That'll be included in my update next week, but I want to include Q4 for you. And so I should have those numbers from Bartholomew in time for next Thursday's meeting.
Question. Is the bench not materializing because nobody wants it or because there's no place to put it?
There's no place to put it at this point.
I see. Thank you.
So if I'm adding this right, we have about $1.4 million total. Is that correct? Oh, they're
Yes.
perfect.
Sorry about that.
No,
Mrs.
no,
Platt.
that was the next slide. Okay, good. Good.
And this is a conservative amount, so I think it will actually shake out to be a little bit higher, but for the committee for planning purposes, I wanted you to have something to think about for the week ahead, and we'll have a final forecast for you next week.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready for the motion?
I just have one question, Leo. I have one question.
Go ahead.
So for
the answer don't take too long.
Got it, Leo.
So
Jackie, I love you. You're eloquent too.
So Maple Woods town meeting allocated $750,000. We at that time we emptied out the community housing bucket and then allocated the rest to the budgetary reserve. Is it possible when funding something or recommending something to town meeting that we know it's going to take several years to do, could we leave the sources of funding open to say, okay, we are recommending $500,000 to $1 million to open space, but we know it's going to take a couple of years. So at the time of disbursement, draw down all the open space money, and then when that is expended, reach into the budgetary reserve.
No, unfortunately. The same way that, really quickly, the same way that when we build our operating budget, there's local receipts, there's the property tax revenue, there's state aid, and that comes to a revenue total. And then we use that as a way to generate what the expense total that we can afford without an override. We can't go back and say, oh, we actually did get more state aid, so let's bring that number up of what we approved in years past. So it's a similar thing where once the town meeting votes it a certain way, we can't go back because we close our books and refer all of the ways that we're going to fund projects to the DOR as part of our tax rate setting and as part of our recap as we close our fiscal year books and report to the state every year. So once that's locked in, we can't change it going forward. Similarly to where you cannot tie future CPA recommendations and future town meeting votes, you couldn't recommend a project over a series of years. That project has to get recommended every year to town meeting unless you're doing an actual bonded debt. So unfortunately, no.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot what the motion was going to be.
Oh, we'll wait.
How could you?
Tom, you move.
I don't want to cross the chair.
I'm
Mr. Chairman, I move. I remember, Mr. Chairman, I move. I'd like to move that we adjourn.
I'd like a second.
To second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We need a voice vote. Barbara.
Barbara's stepped off the meeting a little.
Okay. All right. Janet.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Bill.
Aye.
Peter. He says yes. Leo.
Yes, and I want to thank the town employees for their presentations. They were very accurate and clear.
Excellent. Tom.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good evening, folks.
Next week.
Thank you.